There's a group of Melanesian islands where supplies were dropped during the Second World War. And when the war ended and the soldiers departed, a cult grew up on these islands, and people thought that if they mimicked the behaviour of the soldiers who'd been stationed there before 1945, the gods would start raining goods from the sky again. And so they would light brands to show where the runways were, and they'd try and act like American soldiers, but of course the goodies didn't come. That's what we literally mean by the phrase cargo cult. A number of people, and on all sides in politics and in the media, seem to think that if you keep going around saying growth and investment, and you wear pinstripe suits and spend time in city boardrooms, that somehow growth will magically follow. But of course that's not how the world operates. Stimulating economic growth requires taking some difficult decisions. It's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. The same formula works every time. You need free trade, you need light regulation, and you need low spending. But delivering those things is not so simple. Free trade should have been the easiest of the lot. When we reassumed control of our trade policy almost exactly 5 years ago to the day, we had the opportunity to raise our eyes to more distant horizons and rediscover our vocation as a global trading country. But as became clear, not least in debates in this House, there was a terrific resistance, even to doing trade deals with countries as friendly and as aligned to us and similar in GDP as Australia and New Zealand. And although all sides use the word trade, like those Melanesian islanders, actually getting there when it means opening up our markets is altogether more challenging. And although I wish them every success, I think the government will find that they have that same dynamic as they approach doing a trade deal with the United States. On paper, easily done. USMCA standards are very similar to our CPTPP ones. In practice, doing a deal with Trump may be politically more challenging. The same with deregulation. Everyone's in favour of deregulation. Everyone talks about it. The government has written to all the regulators and said, what are you going to do? Well, of course, the one answer that the regulators are not going to volunteer is we intend to do less, or we intend to wind ourselves back, or we intend to dissolve ourselves altogether. Milton Friedman used to say, don't ask the barber whether you need a haircut. I'm not entirely sure what barbers and haircuts are, but I hear people talking about them. By the same token, it seems a strange thing to ask the regulators how to stimulate growth. What stimulates growth is having fewer regulators and less regulation. Again, easy to say, hard to deliver. And the toughest one, of course, is cuts in spending. We know, in fact, my noble friend Lord Moynihan just last week published volume 2 of his book on how to achieve growth, and he shows with clear and pitiless statistical analysis that the key to growth is to get a larger private sector and a smaller state sector, and that the magic figure is around about a third. If you can get state-controlled spending to less than 33% of GDP, you are in a strong and growing economy. Of course, everyone will sort of nod along again with that. Like the cargo cultists, they'll say, yes, you know, we need a smaller, more efficient state, doing less but doing it better. In practice, it is very difficult to get any meaningful cuts. Both sides play games on this. On the right, people pretend that all manner of money can be got from foreign aid. It's this tiny sum in reality that's overspent again and again. On the left, something similar with wealth taxes. Both sides talk about waste, you know, cracking down on waste, as though no one's ever thought of that and no one's ever tried it before. The reality is that the vast increases in public spending have come in healthcare and in social security. And unless we're prepared to talk about restraining those budgets, then we don't really mean it when we talk about cutting spending. And particularly, if you drill down and say which bit of social security, it's pensions. And I saw that even Vladimir Putin was not able to raise the pension age, the closest he ever came to falling from power. So I sympathise with any democratic government trying to do it. But let me just finish with a cheerful thought, because before we give up in horror and say it just can't be done in a democracy, or at least it can't be done without a terrible crisis, sort of 1976 style, almost all of our problems, in terms of the size of the state, would be solved if we returned to the levels of state spending that we had in the early Blair years. Now, I think there were a few members opposite who were part of the government then, and they will remember that it was actually perfectly comfortable. We weren't living in some kind of Dickensian workshop. So if we could just return to Blair spending levels, how difficult could that be?